Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Mayor and Board of Commissioners for June the 10th, 2025. Can I get the roll call, please?
Emily Klein,
Here.
Dave Warnick, Mayor Marion,
Here.
Pauline Braun, Augie Pearson.
Here.
Dave Warnick.
Here.
Let the record show you have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, will you bow your heads with me for a brief prayer? Father God, I come to you tonight on behalf of our town, Lord. I ask that you watch over our citizens. I ask that you watch over our elected body and their families, Lord. Please be with our police department and our troops serving here and overseas. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, town administrator, consent agenda. Do you have that?
Yes, you have that before you. Dennis, is my mic?
I hear you in here. We're good.
Okay, all right. So you have the consent agenda before you. It's the approval of the May 13th, 2025 meeting minutes. And there's also, as the board adopted in the personnel manual many years ago, whenever a holiday falls on either a Tuesday or a Thursday, the board has the option of granting the Monday before the Tuesday holiday as a day off holiday and the Friday after the Thursday holiday as a day off. So I have that listed as an action item under the consent agenda. As always, you guys can either vote on the consent agenda as is, or you can pull one or more of the items out of the consent agenda if you want to vote on them separately.
What's the board's pleasure?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, the one thing I'd like to follow up on is the July 15th meeting is an odd, it's the third Tuesday of the month because we had scheduling issues during that time period. We were first going to be having the town meeting on July 8th, I believe it was, and we moved it to July 15th. That is also the night of a public hearing for the various annexation resolutions that we've been looking at over the last couple of months. Off the top of my head, I believe there are 3 properties that are subject to a public hearing for annexation. So that's what the July 15th date
I'll have to
is
join
for.
by Zoom that night.
Excuse me?
I'll have to join by Zoom that night.
Okay.
Town administrator, does that include the, is that for one of the properties? Is that the service station that's out of town?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. There are no public presentations tonight, so we're going to go ahead and move into citizens' input. Ms. Maynard?
Same old, same old. We have got to do something with the water issue down in Valley View because I am tired of getting up at 11 and 12 o'clock in the morning when it's raining with a snow shovel pushing water over the sidewalk so my house don't flood. When I come up, I looked at the drain. The drain is not big enough to hold the water. When all that water comes from the overflow pond, that's where the overflow is. It comes behind all those townhouses. We got to get something. It's got to get done. It's not fair that I have to sit there, you know, when it rains or gets up in the middle of the night when it rains and out there shoveling water because the lower swale fills up.
Did the swale fill back in?
No. Oh, further up, that's a different story.
Well, give us the different story.
Let's see, there's fences, and then someone took and put a porch type thing out and filled in the swale, put gravel and all that. That's all filled up. So when the water comes down, and then her house floods too, because the water has nowhere to go.
The one that filled in the swale house floods?
And it's not that I'm trying to
Yeah.
cause problems with my neighbors, but even if we can get some drains, like we did the upper swale, maybe if we can do that for the lower swale, for maybe the water to get caught up further than,
We can look at it again. I know over the years, we've tried putting in the swale, deepening the swale, and then we put in that drain, and I thought the drain was big enough then.
for the upper part, it works. It's perfect for the upper part. It's the lower swale. It's the lower swale closer to the houses.
Okay.
That's where the problem is.
Is there a drain under the sidewalk too there?
I have a drain underneath my sidewalk that has two pipes. It can't handle it. There's just so much water.
Yeah, I know we put
And
the
that's the
pipes
drain
in.
that the town put in
Mhm.
on your property?
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, but last Wednesday, I mean, I'm out there with the shovel when it's raining really hard during the day, and so. And then now I have two dogs, and they all decided, it's a pond.
told you about those labs.
Oh, it's not lab. I had to put her to sleep.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
I have a blue heeler and a pit terrier.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Believe me, my granddaughter bought it for my great-grandson. Don't ask me why, but she did.
Well, Calvin,
Yeah, we can look into it.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
you would think I'd know your backyard by pure memory now, for as many times as we've been out there over the years.
Yeah, well, I have the one drain at the end, or I mean, at the upper part, but,
And Calvin, this wasn't something that the town did. It's a product of bad development. Is that correct?
it's a product of the streetscape. When they put that overflow pond in at the PNC Bank, I don't know why they didn't put the overflow into a drain, like to take it out underneath the street. They put the overflow, and where the cement is, it comes right over and flows right down behind the houses.
Okay.
To answer your question, Mayor, yes, it was a design from the developers.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move into unfinished business. Oh, sorry. Would anyone else like to speak this evening? No? Juanita? Just kidding. In unfinished business, proposed ordinance 2025-02, which is the floodplain code update.
So you have that. This is something that you read into the minutes at the last meeting. Sort of a synopsis of it is that we are required to have a floodplain ordinance in order for the town and its residents to qualify for national flood insurance. If we do not have the ordinance and we don't enforce the ordinance, we technically can be removed from the national floodplain program, making it impossible for residents to be able to get flood insurance if they need it. It is frustrating. It's, we always talk about an unfunded mandate. This is a regulation on the federal and state level, but they dump it on the local municipality to be the enforcement agency of it. So there is what MDE puts out as a model ordinance. I can't tell you objectively whether or not the town had how far back the floodplain ordinance goes. I know that when I came here in '07, MDE advised us that we had to update it, and we did update it around 2013 using the model ordinance at that time. The state came out with a new model ordinance in 2018, and there are some subtle differences in that model ordinance and ours, but one of the biggest issues with our existing ordinance, and you see it in the red strike through, is it where the model ordinance, let's just say the model ordinance said it must be built in accordance to section H of the model ordinance. When MDE did our code, they referenced section H, but our code is not set up with that type of nomenclature. It would have been section 10-500.2, whatever. So there were all kinds of references to go to get other information that really didn't work unless you had the model code to see where the model code was telling you to go, and then you would compare it to our town ordinance. There's three other salient changes to this ordinance. Number one is that in the original ordinance, it had referenced that anyone wishing to appeal the floodplain ordinance would go through the town's Board of Zoning Appeals. And we have since created a code enforcement board of appeals that handles things like dimensions and topo and things that are more structural and engineering wise. And we just feel that our Board of Code Enforcement Appeals is better suited to handle this type of appeal as opposed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So this ordinance makes reference to the fact that the appeals process will go through the Code Enforcement Board of Appeals, not the Board of Zoning Appeals. The other salient change in this is that when somebody has incurred a significant, what is called substantial damage to their property, they have to bring their property up to code in terms of raising it above what the environmental folks have determined is a base flood elevation. And typically you have to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation. So the base flood elevation is derived by an altitude above sea level, if that makes sense. And I think I talked about it at the last meeting. When the base flood elevation in a particular area might be 300 feet above sea level, that's not suggesting that the sea is going to flood, get that high in our area. It's just a form of a measurement that they use to say what the base, if there's a substantial rain, what the scientific estimation of where that flood level will be. So if you hypothetically have a base flood elevation of 300 feet and the bottom of your property is, let's say, 2 feet below that at 298 feet above sea level, you're hypothetically projected to receive up to 2 feet of flood water into your property and hypothetically into your home. And so what the FEMA regulation says is that you not only have to raise your building, if you incur substantial damage, you have to raise it up to the base flood level of 300 feet, but there's a safety margin of 2 additional feet above that. And so if you incur damage to your property or you do improvements to your property that are more than 51% or 51% of the assessed value of your home or appraised value of your home, you're no longer, let's call it, grandfathered, so to speak, in your existing condition. So there was a loophole in the federal law that people that were trying to get around spending the money to properly bring their property into compliance would have damage to their property, and they would just pull building permits out, slowly, like a dripping faucet, so to speak, over a long period of time to avoid that one-time expenditure that would be over 50% or 51% or more. And so the federal government gave local municipalities the ability to say that it was accumulated damage and repairs over 2, 5, 10, you can go as high as 20 years. So that would mean if somebody came in and was making improvements to their home, if the value over, let's say over a 20-year period, finally got over the tipping point of equal to 51% or more of the value of the home, they were no longer compliant in the floodplain regulations. From a staff level, we thought it was unfair to go to a high number, but we do think it's reasonable to say over a 5-year period so that you can get these properties into compliance. And one of the things I want to point out from the staff's perspective, what we're looking at is not only the life safety aspect of the people that are living there, but also the emergency responders that are repeatedly called out to some of these areas to deal with these things. And they're in, rapid water, sometimes in the middle of the night, all kinds of debris in the water. We have some areas where there are no electrical power poles or telephone poles in the area. All the electric to the area comes into basically a transformer sitting on the ground, which hypothetically becomes submerged in water. Now, there are safety precautions built into that so that there isn't a catastrophe, but it's just a risk in there that we don't really want to put our emergency responders in that position all the time. So that's one of the changes, is to say that any repairs or upgrades, repairs, damage, or upgrades over a 5-year period are totaled together to reach that 51%. The other change in there, as I'm scrolling through the document, you can see the red strike through. Here's where we have the definition of the Code Enforcement Appeals Board. A lot of the other red stuff is just matching the nomenclature with the model code. There were some definitions that the model code said that we had to put into the document, but the other salient point here is that the floodplain regulations were silent on what do you do as a municipality or a code enforcement agency once it has been determined that there's a danger to occupants, or the code is silent on how to deal with that. And so what we're doing is using our property maintenance code, the language in our property maintenance code, which is recognized internationally as a way to deal with dangerous properties in terms of placarding them, making it clear that they're dangerous, making a determination that people cannot stay in that building, a time period for the owner to fix the problem, the ability for the town to take mitigation action to eliminate a hazard, and then a process for the property owner to appeal that decision. So what I'm saying to you is that FEMA, in talking to FEMA the other day, they actually said they might borrow our language because they recognized that their code was silent on what do you do after the catastrophe is over, the flooding is over, and the properties are unsafe. How do you deal with that? And so we have good language in there talking about how we would deal with those unsafe and dangerous properties. So that, in a nutshell, is what this ordinance is. We had to submit it to the Maryland Department of the Environment for their review. They verbally had said to me the other day that they were very comfortable with it, and we should be getting a letter in the next week or two confirming that. So we were required to let them know that we were doing this, and we at least verbally got a sign off on what we're doing, because we're not really doing anything of any significance.
How many of these properties, Calvin, do we have currently that need to be up on the regulation of the floodplain?
I would say off the top of my head, we might have maybe 35 to 40 occupied properties. But we have a lot of structures like accessory sheds and swimming pools that are in the floodplain areas. But in terms of where people could really get hurt, I'm guessing like, 35 to 45 total properties that are affected by
And how many
floodplain.
of them are mobile?
We have one property that contains 30 mobile homes in total, but 21 of them are actually in the floodplain area. The remaining ones are above the flood level, so the likelihood of them ever being impacted is not very great.
Okay, thank you. So are we asking for a motion on this?
It is you, if you guys are comfortable with it, you can adopt this ordinance tonight.
Is there a motion on the table to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion regarding this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you, Town Administrator. New business, Resolution 2025-12, which is our fiscal year 2026 operating budget. Town Administrator, do you have that?
Yes. So before we get into the actual resolution, we just want to follow up on a lot of the legwork that's been done on the budget. For the last couple of years, we've had a rather straightforward budget. It's not that complex. We developed the system many, many years ago. I can say with a very, very high success rate that the town typically comes very, very close to its revenue projections, but typically spends less than what we project from an expense standpoint, which is good in the standpoint that we've all talked ad nauseum in the past of how the sewer and water moratorium affected the town and the reduction of real estate tax values. We talk about the town of Rising Sun's total overall assessed value of properties being about $236 million back in 2010, which was the apex of the property values going up out of the 90s and early 2000s, and that generated about $900,000 of real estate tax at that time. The town just passed the $236 million assessed value last year. This year, you're going to see that our overall assessed value is roughly $243 million in change. And that is how the real estate tax rate is derived, by basically taking that overall number and dividing it by 100 and then multiplying that by our tax rate. And that's consistent throughout the state of Maryland. So the point I'm driving at is that the housing bubble and the sewer and water moratorium really had a significant impact on the town of Rising Sun. And when we get into the actual resolution, I'm going to point you in the direction of some really remarkable data that's coming out of what has happened up to this point. But you have a budget that's divided into our general funds and our proprietary funds. Just as a reminder, the auditing standards for a general fund and proprietary funds are different. We've talked about this in the past. When you look at the proprietary funds, we have to show depreciation as a cash item. So when we get to the end of the proprietary fund, you will see how we pull depreciation out of it, because it's not really a cash in, cash out value. And if you just show the depreciation in there, we would be way underwater in many cases, because depreciation is basically a value attributed to your infrastructure and your roads and your vehicles, and it's an accounting thing that you have to depreciate that. So the number is really high. So it would skew our bottom line budget. The other thing I always remind the board is that because, and I'll say this honestly, other communities all over the country have, I believe, a lot more flexibility in the way they can do their budgets. And we've talked about this before. Even in your household, they always recommend that you have maybe 6 months to a year and a half of savings to cover all your expenses. And that, in case a catastrophe happens, that holds true to municipal government. So when you're looking at the total of, just in quick math, the total across the board of all of our funds is probably like $5 million. We should have a year and a half in reserve. And the only way you build that up in reserve is having a lot more revenue coming in than expenses. And you roll that additional money into your rainy day funds. And that's one of the reasons why the town took such a hit when it came time for them to build their water and sewer plants back in the day. They had no rainy day funds set aside to do that, so they had to take on massive debt. We talked about that, $26 million. And you divide that among 1,000 rooftops in general terms, and it's a lot of money. And it's the reason why our water and sewer rates are so high, is because we're digging out of those financial decisions that were made many years ago on how to guide the town going forward. So you're going to see in this budget, and people, and some of you folks have been on this board for a while. Augie, you go way back. We typically balance our general fund with like $14,000 surpluses. And when you're talking about a $2.5 million budget or $3 million budget across the board, balancing it on a $14,000 surplus, that's not a whole lot of margin for error. But yet, as we always say every year, and I think it's important for residents to recognize this, we are one of only 2 communities in Cecil County that offer the robust services that we do of code enforcement and building inspections, and now we're doing our own stormwater management, and we provide police protection. And there are some communities in Cecil County that don't do any of that. And in some of the communities, those tax rates are actually higher than our tax rate, and we're going to see that in the later data that I give you. So this elected body, prior elected bodies, for the last more than a decade have done a really good job of keeping real estate tax low, actually growing the staff to provide the robust services. And let me put this in perspective. There are communities in this county that have maybe slightly more population than we do, but they have sometimes 2 to 3 times more number of staff that we do. We're budgeted for 14 staff members, which is significantly lower than similar communities in the county, but we're actually only operating with 9 right now for a variety of reasons that, we've talked about before and will continue to talk about. Our budget reflects filling those vacancies in here. So what I'm saying to you is this is pretty standard for what we've had to do over the years, is keep the momentum going forward without reducing staffing, reducing services, or raising taxes. So one of the things that we did as a staff this year to make it a little bit easier is, when I first came here in 2007, the budget was like 2 pages, and that was it. And so I always joke, we used to have a miscellaneous line item that had $200,000 or $300,000 in a miscellaneous line item. It's like, how in the world do you objectively do a budget with that much in miscellaneous? So one of the things we've done over the years...
Would you like an answer on that?
Yeah.
No.
So one of the things we've done over the years is divide our general fund into individual departments. So you can see how much is being spent on public works. You can see how much is general admin. And we've diversified that into emergency management, parks and recreation, streets. I think it's been very beneficial when we're talking about very small margins at the end of the year to really drill down into what is really needed in each one of those departments to make sure we can meet our targets in the future, revenue-wise and task-wise. But that also gets, you know, I don't want to dismiss it, but it also gets pretty mundane and a lot of details in terms of sitting here and going over the budget and all those, because you could ask a question, and in order to answer it, Judy and I might have to go to 7 or 8 different pages in the document to say there's a little bit here and there's a little bit there, because we diversified the expenses. So what we did for you this year is, and I'm sort of being comical when I say this to you, but picture the budget as a cake, and we baked a cake for you. Here's your budget. And so what we have given you is a summary sheet of what the ingredients are in the cake. And so on that summary sheet in the general fund, you can see all the items broken into categories of what is in the general fund, what was baked into the general fund that we felt was a priority. And when I talk about priority, I'm talking about the concept of keeping the lights on, keeping the place operating. What do we have to do bare minimum? And then there were some other things that we looked at as being secondary in terms of, they're not absolutely critical. We could do some finagling, do without, you know, so we put them in a secondary category for you to be able to see that. And then we put things like optional into where at the end of the day, we really don't have to do it, but as a staff, we're recommending that we do it. And on your summary, you're gonna see the money set aside for community events. And those community events are Sunfest, Spooktacular, and Winterfest,
Winter extravaganza.
Winter Extravaganza. So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for correcting.
we as a staff, you know, understand the importance of that, what it means to the community. I know the mayor's gonna talk about it. We had an amazing Sunfest, you know, a lot of participation, a lot of goodwill, a lot of community spirit. Winter Extravaganza allows people to come out and enjoy carriage rides as a family and take photos and build memories. And the tractor parade is one of the, you know, it's now becoming a hallmark event in the county. It's taken off so well. And so we can take pride and ownership of that, and so can our residents. So in baking this cake for you, but trying to keep our, you know, be able to maintain the tax rate without raising it and still provide the services, we said, let's make sure we're funding that, you know, those community events. So that's basically what you're looking at on your general fund in terms of what is priority and what is not priority, and how the budget, the ingredients that were in the budget. So you're going to see it later on in the resolution, but basically we have $3,767,582 of projected revenue and $3,764,097 of expense for a projected fund balance at the end of the year of $3,485. So that's consistent with what we've had to do over the last couple of years. And I'll highlight that a little bit more. But buried also in the details in here that I think is important is that we have to fill the vacancies on our staff. And so this budget reflects filling those vacancies. It also projects increase in electric that everybody's experiencing in the area. It reflects putting money into paving some roads picking up some vehicles, taking care of some things at Veterans Park like the pavilion. It's not just a tighten up the budget and don't do anything to enhance the community. We've never done a budget that way. We've always sort of rolled the dice and put our chips in the middle of the table and, move forward with this stuff and then evaluated it as the year goes. And so that's why it is pretty neat that we typically hit our revenue marks. And even though we prepare for a worst-case scenario, we never seem to spend what we say we're going to spend in expenses. And that's because all of the staff, including the elected body, is very conscious about the money that's being spent. And we want to get the best bang for our buck. And so that is a snapshot of the general fund in there. I think it's also important to raise at this point, in the police department in particular, we needed to make some improvements in our police department because regardless of one's political, position in the world, obviously going back a couple years ago, it's very difficult to attract police officers right now for a variety of reasons. There's been a lot of changes made where maybe you can make an argument that there's been too much of a push to hold law enforcement accountable for things that might have not are perceived as not being done right. And we all know there's two sides to everything, and it gets really complicated. But the point is, it's driven a lot of aspiring candidates away from wanting to be in law enforcement. And so what we're seeing, and the town has experienced this, that we've had officers that have jumped to greener pastures because everybody from the cities to the state and the counties all over the place are all competing for a smaller pool of candidates. And it's getting really hard to attract those candidates. And so this will be the second time in the last, I'm going to say like 5 years, we're projecting to make some salary adjustments in the law enforcement arena to make us more competitive. We did it a couple years ago and we got great results, but I guess everybody turned around and said, hey, look what Rising Sun's doing, let's do that and do it one better. And so we are spending money in a manner that we want to move our town forward, but we also want to make sure that our town continues to be one of the safest communities in Cecil County with one of the lowest crime rates. And so the elected body and the staff and the chief, we've made a commitment to making sure that we put the community's best foot forward to be able to do that. So there's a lot of other things in this budget. We have computers, just like anyone else does. We have computers that get up there in age and they're slowing down. And as we're automating everything, we have to upgrade computers, so we have that. We have public works vehicles that we have one or two where if I didn't know better, I would swear Fred Flintstone could drive it because there's typically like no floorboards underneath it. You can see down to the road in certain cases. And so we've been putting gum and chicken wire on these things over the years. And so we got a couple in public works that we have to go ahead and make the commitment to replace. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff coming to the church. We're going to be spending, we're going to be making a really good investment. The mayor will be, I believe the mayor already did release a visual of it a while back. We're making a big investment in our downtown area to make the church a cultural center and make it a place where if we have a parade, people can hang out on the patio that we're going to build. If you go to any of our local businesses and buy a sandwich or buy a coffee and you want to sit outside, it'll be an open area for you to be able to sit outside. We have some really exciting stuff going to happen inside the church. We're working with some other entities it hasn't been finalized yet, but it's going to be really cool what we're going to be bringing to the town from a cultural standpoint. As you know, we have purchased properties in town. We have purchased 2 properties, and we're taking possession of a third, and we've thanks to the mayor and the elected body, we have built fantastic relationships with the state of Maryland, and we're starting to see a lot of grant money funneled our way to improve our town. What I'm saying to you is I just got done saying our margins are really close, but we put ourselves in a position with assistance to buy properties. And so we're buying we're getting possession of 3 of the properties. All 3 will be torn down. 2 of them will be turned back over to the private sector to reimburse the town for some expenses, but to have a clean slate to build something else there that's bigger and better and works better within the economic ecosystem that we are trying to build. The other property we're going to turn into a municipal parking lot that will be ideally situated in our downtown area to help our entrepreneur mom and pop businesses. Over the next couple of years, and I'm going to highlight it again in the resolution, you're going to see evidence of this, the town of Rising Sun is becoming a very attractive place for investment. And we have corporations wanting to come here, but I know this elected body and our staff is committed to always elevating the entrepreneurial spirit of Rising Sun and putting them in a position to prosper and be successful. And that's why we're making some of the investments in the downtown area. So again, I'm talking about very small margins in our budget, but I'm talking in essence $741,000 worth of capital investments that we're talking about making going forward on top of the investments that we already made. So that's the general fund. The proprietary fund, it's basically set up the same way. You have a summary page that provides the priority, and in both the priority and the secondary line items in there. What makes the proprietary fund a lot easier is that, and a lot of people don't realize this, that 99% of, well, let me correct myself there, a large percentage of the revenue or the charges that we have to charge are simply paying back debt service. Again, I ask people, and everybody, members of this board are paying this sewer and water rates. That's what we inherited. That's what we had to dig out of a hole. But a large percentage of that is just being paid for the debt service on it. What I'm saying to you is the town of Rising Sun has made no money per se on the water and sewer funds going back to maybe all the way back to like 2009, 2008, 2009. We've had very, very small margins at the end of the year because we're pumping all that money into debt service. And you've also heard me talk about the other thing that comes down our way is when the federal government and the states and the environmental folks get together and say, hey, we have to do things in the environment. Nobody is sitting here saying we don't want to help the environment. The frustrating thing is the feds and the state come up with the idea and then they charge the little old municipalities with spending the money to do it. And I've talked about this before. We have under an MS4 requirement basically a $2.75 million bill that we have to come up with to comply with nutrient loading that goes into the Chesapeake Bay. It's as simple as that. And so the feds and the state come up with the idea, but they basically tell 1,000 rooftops with a $5,000 margin, a $14,000 margin, go try to figure out how to raise $2.75 million on top of that. And so it's convoluted, it's confusing, but we are muddling our way through it. And so the water and sewer fund is pretty simple because there aren't a whole lot of areas where we can cut anything. There's no waste in it, there's no surplus. So at the end of the year, you're looking at the total between the two funds. The sewer fund, the total between the two funds will be $48,839 between the two funds is what our end of the year net gain will be. That's actually a little bit higher than what we've done in the past. So our budgets are straightforward. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the budget before we get into the resolution itself.
Does anyone have any questions, or are we good to move into the resolution? We're good to move into the resolution.
All right, so in order to adopt our budget, we pass a resolution for it. We already passed the tax rate. Remember, I talked about that. The elected body committed to keeping the tax rate the way it was and charged the staff to get creative, to have a balanced budget, and that's what we have delivered as a balanced budget. So you have Resolution 2025-12 before you. It's a resolution adopting an annual budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, and authorizing the collection of taxes herein levied, assessing service charges, and appropriating funds for the fiscal year. I'm going to go past the first couple of boilerplates. The first three, I'll go to the fourth one because that's where the salient information is. Whereas the town has received a notice from the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation that for the tax year beginning July 1st, 2025, the estimated real property assessable base will increase by 3.12% from $235,806,604 to $243,161,490, which is a $7,354,886 increase over last year. That means the value of properties went up higher. We're going to focus on that in a second. Whereas the town of Rising Sun, like other small municipalities, is facing significant challenges in providing basic services such as streets and sidewalks, maintenance, parks, trash collection, and other amenities to our residents. However, Rising Sun is also unique in the amount of other services that are provided through real estate revenues, such as daily police patrols and protection, weekly trash, recycling and yard waste collection, Sunfest, Spooktacular, Winter Extravaganza, Tractor Parade, Tiger Trot, Little League Parade, Carol Sing, and other family fun activities. And whereas the past year has brought continued economic pressure on municipal operations, even as overall inflation has moderated, Rising Sun's costs for essential materials such as asphalt, concrete, piping, and other infrastructure components remain well above pre-pandemic levels, and construction-related expenses continue to rise due to persistent supply chain challenges and market volatility. Energy and utility costs tied to operating town facilities, lighting public areas, and maintaining parks have also increased between 3 and 15% year over year. At the same time, the town faces growing compliance obligations from state and federal mandates, including stormwater regulations, ADA accessibility requirements, and environmental protection standards, many of which impose a substantial cost without providing corresponding funding. Despite these economic pressures, the town's real estate tax base increased by only 3.12%, resulting in a projected revenue increase of just 2.5%. a modest gain that does not keep pace with the rising cost of delivering essential services and community programs. And whereas the town recognizes that this is an impact on all of our residents and businesses, and we continue to work to automate and streamline our services to achieve greater efficiency in services while maintaining comparable tax rates to the other 7 Cecil County towns, with our current tax rate estimated to be the 4th lowest overall tax rate in the county, the lowest percentage of tax rate increase over the past 9 years, the 2nd lowest real estate tax burden per resident, the 4th lowest tax burden on the median household income of our residents, the 4th lowest average residential town tax bill, and the lowest median tax rate. And whereas in addition, and in order to lessen the tax burden on our residents, the town of Rising Sun is the only local government that provides a 2% discount on all real estate tax and debt service tax if paid in full by July 1st of 2025. And whereas although the last 2 decades have been challenging, the patience and resiliency of our residents and businesses has clearly pushed our community to the front of the line as a place to raise a family and operate a business. And this progress is reflected in Rising Sun's housing market, which ranks among the top performing towns in Cecil County. We're actually number 2 in the housing market, whereas home values are not only outpacing the county's average, but have grown by over 3.2% in the past year alone, signaling strong demand and investor confidence and a high quality of life that continues to attract new families and businesses alike. And whereas to that end, the mayor and commissioners have developed an annual operating budget for primary governmental and proprietary fund activities for fiscal year 25, see attached, that are designed to make investments in our infrastructure, Main Street revitalization, repave our roads, fix sidewalks, and offer additional amenities and services to our residents. And whereas the primary governmental fund has a balanced budget by way of reserve fund transfer to reflect possible expenditures that will be tied to the American Rescue Plan and American Jobs Plan. The fund has a total revenue projection of roughly $3,767,582 and projected expenditures of $3,764,097 and will result in a surplus of roughly $3,485 at the end of the year. And whereas the proprietary funds have a balanced budget with total revenue projections of roughly $2,573,156 and a projected expenditure of $2,524,317 and will result in a surplus of roughly $48,839. Whereas the budget will be based upon the following already established tax rates and service charges as follows. The tax rate for all real property not otherwise exempted and located within the corporate limits of the town of Rising Sun shall remain at 0.46 for each $100 of assessed value as approved previously in Resolution 2025-09. The Cecil County Department of Finance will collect the real property tax and the debt service and utility tax listed on the annual real estate tax bill on behalf of the town of Rising Sun. The town will continue to provide a 2% discount upon payment in full of any real property tax if taxes are paid in full by the end of July 2025, and a 1% penalty each month for any payments received after October 1st of 2025 until the balance is paid in full. Such taxes on land and improvements shall be computed on the valuation of said properties as certified to the town of Rising Sun by the Maryland State Department of Assessments. The tax rate for all tangible personal property of business, utilities, or contract carriers operating in the corporate limits of the town of Rising Sun shall remain at .90 per $100 of assessed value of all tangible operating personal property, including commercial inventory. In computing and levying such taxes on tangible personal property, the valuation of said properties as certified to the town of Rising Sun by the Maryland State Department of Assessment shall be used as the assessed valuation of tangible personal property. The town shall maintain one flat $384.36 debt service and utility tax assessment on all real property tax parcel that is currently developed or is vacant, not developed, but can be developed in accordance with the town's zoning code unless such property is declared non-developable and currently exempt as spelled out in Resolution 2016-10. The charges assessed against an individual dwelling unit or independent commercial space with the intent to have each unit cover a portion of the cost related to debt service financing of town buildings, parks, and property, past utility upgrades, vehicle streets, and sidewalk restoration, and regardless of the types of services provided, the level of service, or the lack thereof. This assessment will be reflected on the annual real property tax bill issued by the county and will be subject to the same discounts and penalty fees as real property tax. If a new dwelling unit or business space is built, rented, or otherwise discovered after July's tax bills are issued, it won't be charged the debt service fee on the county bill that year. Instead, the town will issue a separate prorated bill to the property owner for that year and include it in the following year's county tax bill going forward. Number 7, the town shall collect on a regular schedule without extra charge all normal household originated trash and recycling from single-family dwellings in accordance with Chapter 7 of the Town Code. In addition, certain commercial properties and locations with multiple collection points may also be provided services in accordance with Chapter 7, with the cost for these services to be assessed in accordance with the town's fee schedule as adopted and modified by the Mayor and Commissioners. Number 8, some revenue projections as shown in this budget are related to fees as indicated in the town's current fee schedule as set by resolution from time to time by the Board of Commissioners. Number 9, the town's utility rates will continue to follow the prescribed pro forma plan for water and sewer as adopted by Resolution 2016-13 and as modified from time to time by resolution of the Mayor and Commissioners, with the rates to match the projected charges for the calendar year 2026 as shown in the town's water and sewer rate table. Number 10, discounts for early payment of utility bills, failure to pay utility bills, building permits, and other service fees due to the town will continue to be spelled out in the town's fiscal policy and adopted fee schedule, which can be amended from time to time by resolution of the Mayor and Commissioners. Therefore, be it enacted and resolved that the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun wish to adopt the proposed fiscal year 2026 annual budget to include the tax rates and service charges as set forth. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that the Mayor and Commissioners have passed, approved, and adopted this resolution on this 10th day of June. The last thing I want to show you, because I said I wanted to bring this home, there's devil in the details on this, which are very interesting. So, hear me out on what I'm saying. Overall, the town's overall real estate tax base increased by only 3.12% this year, down from a 5.5% increase the year prior. Our local housing market continues to show strong performance, with home values rising by 3.2% over the past year. This modest tax-based growth is primarily due to the absence of new residential construction. However, it underscores a more meaningful trend. the consistent appreciation of existing properties. This sustained growth reflects the ongoing investments made by local business, property owners in the town itself, all of which contribute to a strong, resilient market. It also speaks to the enduring charm and character of Rising Sun, the qualities that continue to attract new interest and strengthen community pride year after year. What I'm saying to you is we don't get new housing builds in our community. We don't get brand new properties that come in with a brand new tax rate that gets thrown on top of our projected base rate increase from year to year. The other communities in Cecil County get the benefit of that. And so what's remarkable is that it is very clear that our community is very attractive and a lot of investments are coming to the town. What I mean is people are investing in what they have now because it is a good investment. And so when I say the overall tax base is growing only by 3.12%, it's not getting that growth from a new commercial building. It's getting it, or it's not getting it from a new residential property. It's getting it from all the businesses that are investing in the area and homeowners that are investing and people that decide they don't want to live in the town anymore, but they're selling it for a significant amount of money more than what they bought the property for. We are number 2 in this county in home values. The only one that has a higher home value than us, I believe, is Chesapeake City. The average home value in this community is $393,000 is the average home value. And so that home value is growing at a rate of 3.2%, and it's growing at a faster rate than the county is in its totality. So that's an encouraging piece of financial news. The other thing that I think is important is I mentioned about our median effective property tax rate being the lowest in the county. And so what that means is that the median affected property tax rate shows the percentage of a home's market value that a typical homeowner pays in property taxes each year in a given area, and it provides a clear measure of local property tax burden relative to home value. It's calculated like this. If the annual property tax is divided by the home's market value. So if a home in Rising Sun has a value of $300,000 and the owner pays $2,430 in property taxes, their effective tax rate is 0.81. Why is this important? This provides a real-life perspective. It tells you how much residents actually pay based on real home values, not just tax rates on paper. This provides home buyer confidence that they can compare the towns fairly and understand local affordability. It provides a benchmark that enables us to not only compare ourselves to other Cecil County communities, but it allows us to compare ourselves to the state and national. So Rising Sun's median effective tax rate is 0.81. Maryland's is 1.06. The national median is 1.802, and Cecil County is 0.89. So that means that Rising Sun residents pay less in property taxes relative to their home value than most Marylanders and Americans, and that includes Cecil County on the average. That reflects strong fiscal management and growing home values without disproportionately increasing the tax burden. What contributes to this? Ongoing investments in public spaces, infrastructures, and amenities, homeowners making those investments, businesses making those investments, stable municipal tax rates, and rising home values driven by community character, safety, and quality of life. What I'm saying to you is we're actually doing pretty good despite the uphill battle we've had for nearly 20 years. So that's encouraging. because there are other benefits coming over the horizon that you're really gonna put this community in a very sustainable position for the foreseeable future, so.
Could I get a motion to approve the budget?
So moved.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes. On page 2, is the real estate and debt service tax if paid in full by July the 1st or August the 1st?
On which one? Which page 2 are you looking at?
Page
The resolution.
2 of 6 of the resolution.
For the discount, it's by August 1st.
It's
I
by
think it's
August
August
1st.
1st.
It's by August 1st. Is there a typo in it?
No, a correction, you said July 1st.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? I just wanted to thank the staff. This budget reflects the board's continued commitment to conservative principles, living within our means, prioritizing essential services, and protecting our taxpayers. So thank you for your hard work on this. We do appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Budget passes. Thank you, Town Administrator. Thank you, staff. Moving forward into staff reports, Town Administrator.
The only thing that I gave you a little bit of an update on what we're doing with the church. We're going to settlement on the third and final property that we're getting acquisition of on June 27th. We're getting prices for demo. We're securing grant funds for the demo. Our intention is to take the buildings down and then probably put a crush and run on it and be able to use those areas for temporary parking as we continue to move forward with the redevelopment of the downtown area. We're also getting ready to start moving on the grant that we got for Community Park, Triangle Park, the dog park. That includes a new tot lot, bathrooms, dog fountains. There's a lot of moving parts to that we still have to figure that out, but that's on the horizon coming. We're in paving season, so Judy will be working with her team to start, working out a paving schedule on some of the roads. I'm saying up front, we know that we can't pave all the roads right now. We're taking the most priority ones, but we do have a long-range plan on continuing to work on paving all of the roads over a short period of time. So that concludes my town administrator's report.
Thank you. Assistant Town Administrator.
No, tonight I don't have a report.
Thank you. Chief?
Okay, I have a few things to cover. First, the speed camera installation on Pearl Street. If you've driven by there, you'll see that the camera's up. We're at the point now we're waiting for Delmarva to install a meter. Then the camera will go live. The camera will be live during the summer. Although kids are out of school, there are still school functions happening, like summer school and other events in the school system, in the school building. So those cameras will be live during that process. You also see that the speed trailers will be floating around different locations in town. The speed cameras are to re-educate the public on the speed limits throughout the town. It helps reduce those events that may occur as a result of speeding, accidents, and things like that. It's an overall attempt to re-educate the public into having some courtesy for pedestrians and other drivers throughout town and reducing their speed. Second, third thing I have to cover, we have seen an increase in auto thefts in our community. If you watch any nightly news throughout the country, you'll see that the problems that Kia and Hyundai have with the theft protection has spilled over into our community. We've had 5 within a month. And of those, we are aware who has been involved. We're gathering evidence and hoping to prosecute some soon. However, we still need the assistance of the public. If you see something, say something. If you're out during the overnight and you see something that looks odd to you, don't hold it until the morning. Pick up the phone and call, and that way we may catch someone in the act of doing a crime.
Call 911.
Yes, call
Not
911.
The police
Please.
number. 911.
Yes, 911. If you leave a message, it's not going to be retrieved until the next morning. If you send me a Facebook message, it's not going to be retrieved until the next morning. If you send an email, it may be retrieved when I return to work. That's not good enough. We do need you to pick up the phone and call, okay? All those forms of communication are great if it's it's a non-emergency, but this is something that's important and will help your community, so pick up the phone and call 911 for us, please. I'm going to touch on also the applicant process that Calvin spoke of earlier. Due to many events, policing has become very competitive with the hiring pool. Many agencies have upped their salary, they've upped all kinds of benefits, but at the end of the day, you still have to pass the same standards throughout the state. Maryland's policing standards have been set by our legislature. It's overseen by the Maryland Police Training Commission, and that doesn't change. So no agency is going to overlook a poor decision you made earlier in life that won't allow you to be a police officer. No agency is going to overlook your drug use. Things like that. It doesn't happen. We're not accepting applications from those people that aren't of good character, moral character, and people have questioned the fact that we're only looking for, and I can't say only, we're looking for people that have a high school education. Here's the thing. You can go to a trade school out of high school and become very proficient at what you do. You can go to college out of high school and get a degree. You can go to a police academy at the age of 21 and get a degree also. You're going to walk away from most academies with a AA degree. That's not the end of it. Most agencies do provide tuition reimbursement to help you get to your master's or any other schooling, as long as it's relevant to what the field you're in. So, yes, we take high school diplomas, we take the best candidates that are physically fit, and we will teach you how to become a good law enforcement officer. We will teach you to the same standard as any and every law enforcement agency in the state. So, if you're out there and you want to apply, we've got plenty of applications. Come talk to me. I'll talk to your ear off about it if you like, until you submit an application and we can get you started. And beyond that, that's my report for now, unless there's some questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Town Attorney.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a busy month trying to line up all your real estate settlements, but the good news is the one that Calvin talked about is going to happen at the end of this month, so about 2 weeks away. I know that the long-awaited 16 Main Street court case has moved itself ahead, and this Friday we actually have a status conference to find out what the court's plans are and how we're going to move ahead on that, so that's a very positive step. And then at the end of July, we're going to have our first hearing on the board that you just created with the ordinance that you did tonight on a variance application for the floodplain issue. So it's going to be a busy month preparing for that. So that's what I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Jay. All right, moving forward into the mayor's report. We had a lot of events the end of May and beginning of June. We attended the Plumpton Park Zoo charity event, which was a really successful event, raised a lot of money. The town helped sponsor that event. We love our zoo. We love coordinating with them and partnering with them. And by all accounts, it was a wonderful event, raising a lot of money for Plumpton Park Zoo. The chief, RSPD, and myself attended the Cops and Cones event at Soda Jerk Ice Cream. It was a great event. Chief and I were both stunned at how many people came out. The place was packed. Wonderful to see people connecting with our police department, as well as with the Cecil County Canine Group that joined us. Last but not least, the town also attended, myself, Commissioner Kleiner, the Assistant Town Administrator, and our Town Administrator attended the 350th anniversary of Cecil County. This was an event hosted by the Cecil County Chamber. Our good friend Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller attended, and one of her spotlights was the hard work of the Department of Information Technology in Cecil County. And she spoke about the expansion of broadband as well as the hard work that the county IT department continues to do. Last but not least, Sunfest, wonderful event. Even with the rain, people came out. The sun came out towards the end of the event, but it was still a wonderful time hosted by the Rising Sun Chamber of Commerce. We thank them, their volunteers, and their sponsors for all their hard work, as well as the hard work of our Public Works Department, our administration, and the police department as well. The town is currently selling our pop sockets. These go on the back of your cell phone. They are going towards, all the money raised goes towards our community events fund. And you can grab one at Town Hall anytime that you would like. Town Hall is open between 9 and 5. Moving forward into commissioners' reports. Commissioner Kleiner.
I wanted to echo accolades and thanks to our town staff and to the Department of Public Works and our police department for their support on Saturday for Sunfest. Thank you so much for all that you do and for, you know, the less glamorous, you know, blocking streets and redirecting traffic and escorting us to parade start sites and everything in between. And we just are very grateful for all your support. And also thanks to the Rising Sun Chamber of Commerce for putting on another great event. It was probably the biggest Sunfest I've ever attended. A lot of vendors. There's always something new with the food trucks. And I like food, everyone knows, so I'm always glad to see that. But it's just really, it's heartwarming to see a community come together like this every year, and it doesn't matter what the weather is, you know, they're coming out in droves anyway. So thank you all very much.
And I wanted to echo Commissioner Kleiner. Thank you for saving my life during the parade. Commissioner Kleiner told me not to eat any of the candy for the kids, and I decided to partake and ended up choking while we were driving towards the end of the event. Luckily, the driver and Commissioner Kleiner helped me recover, but lesson learned, do not eat the kids' candy. So that was
Did you
a little
punch
funny-
him to
a little funny story.
dislodge?
Concussions and now you're joking?
Yeah. So Commissioner Pearson.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that must be a problem of the mayor, not everybody, because other members of this board and the police chief did not have any problems with the candy. I don't have much, just a reminder, school lets out Friday, kids are gonna be out playing during the day. Just be careful of what you're doing, checking your speed. That's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Warnick.
The only thing, we have some maintenance issues at the park we're looking at, and we're gonna get them, the Parks and Rec, that program's underway?
That's due to start soon.
Yeah, so we don't, yeah, so we are working, and the chief's been working with Director Van Dyke at the County Parks and Rec. The county is going to be putting on some programs in the Rising Sun Town Park. And I apologize for my tardiness. I was actually presenting on broadband to county council prior to this meeting, so I had to get out of there and get to here quickly.
That program's due to start on July 7th.
July 7th, okay, great.
All right. Any?
My report.
All right. Thank you. You can see on the agenda the Board of Zoning Appeals and Commission schedule, as well as town events and upcoming town holidays, our trash, recycling, and yard waste schedule. Is there anything else to come before the board this evening? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.